Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. And what we wanted to do was update the public and folks about one of the new innovative approaches we're using with respect to gunshot detection in our city. And I want to take us back in general, having been born and raised here. We all, I think, unfortunately understand that we often have heard gunshots throughout our lives in Albuquerque and in our neighborhoods. I think we also know that this has been an increasing problem for many, many years, including most recently in the last few years. But there's, at a high level, one dynamic that typically happens, which is that people will call 311 or 242 cops and they're concerned, right? We hear gunshots. It absolutely creates and instills fear. And we understand that. It does for anyone. So we call, what do? We call the police. That's what we do. But then the police say, well, where was it? And we say, well, somewhere behind my house or down the street, right? And then they say, are there still someone driving around? Do you see anyone? And we say, well, not anymore, And we go down this chain. And it's been very difficult for our team to actually try and be helpful in these cases. Then came along gunshot detection technology, which really has changed this entire dynamic on a number of fronts. It allows us to actually get within 40 feet, a 40-foot radius of a gunshot. And this changes a lot of things in terms of what we can actually do to keep our community safer. And first and foremost, it allows us to actually pinpoint that area. So now when you call, they would cross-reference with our gunshot detection software, and they would say, we have this, and PSAs or whoever may come out, and they can search just a 40-foot area. And they can actually find shell casings, which then they can use in our database, our NIBINS database, to track if that gun has been used in other crimes. And we use that as evidence to then use in court cases that will actually help people, meaning our prosecutors and our community, keep people behind bars. We know that gunshot detection has been absolutely critical in almost every major case that we've arrested someone, including the Muslim shootings that are now on trial right now, including the shootings at elected officials that happened, I think, a year ago, and including the child who was shot at and killed coming out of Isotopes Park. All of these cases rely on gunshot detection. But APD is taking this one level further, and they're also trying to reduce the volume of gunshots that are completely unnecessary and extremely scary and sometimes life-threatening in our community. It was just, I believe a couple of days ago, we had gunshots go through someone's house that were reported in the Northeast Heights. I know over New Year's, this always happens in New Year's, where the next day there are reports of bullet holes in children's bedrooms from bullets coming down through roofs after they're being shot. So now what APD has been piloting in the Southeast and is now rolling out wherever we have gunshot detection software is a program where we're actually going to notice the property where these gunshots came from. And most of the time, they're because of the person living on that property. Not always, but we know the location of where they were. And so now we are announcing our SHOT program, which is an acronym for ShotSpotter, Hotspot Organized Tracking. And no other agency that we're aware of is doing this in the country. But what we're doing is we're actually identifying these locations where there are numbers of gunshots that happen repeatedly at the same location. And that includes our next move is right here around Tower Park, which has a long history of this. And we actually start by just sending a letter to the residents saying we know these gunshots are occurring. And we highlight that negligent use of a firearm has repercussions and that we will take legal action. But just using this data alone, in our pilot program near Wisconsin and Chico in the Northeast, we have seen a 47% decrease in gunshots. And I think in general, we believe this may save lives. And we also know that this definitely makes people feel and actually be safer in their homes in these hotspot areas. So with that, we're going to walk through exactly how this program works. And we're going to start with our Chief of Police, Harold Medina. Chief?
Thanks everybody for being here today, and first of all I'd like to thank Detective Lukenhoff for all of your hard work. We would not be here today if we didn't have people at the ground level who deal with shots fired and violent crime on day in and day out basis, coming up with new and innovative ideas on how we could utilize the technology we've had. I want to rewind the clock back about 4 years ago. We brought ShotSpotter to the city of Albuquerque. We were very basic. We used it to respond to scenes where we had heard shots fired. And over the years, we have really found a way to build upon it in order for us to get maximum results for the investment that we've made. And we know that we use it to build strong criminal cases for prosecution. We get it to give information for detectives to be able to ask questions of suspects and determine, verify certain information during the course of one of these violent crimes investigations. And now the new idea came is how we can use it to work on some of the biggest hotspots where we have the most shots being fired, and how we could incorporate community policing to those principles and go out and work with the community to help solve some of these problems. We could ask why we're out here in the Southwest, and for me it was very special. They asked where we wanted to move next and what we wanted to do, and the Southwest will always have a special place in my heart because I was a patrol officer, a sergeant, a lieutenant, a commander, and eventually a deputy chief and a chief to the southwest part of the city. And there is no other part of the city that can take that claim that I've had such involvement with at every single rank. And we're standing in a park in a part of town where over the years I have heard the impact of shots fired and how it impacts the community, whether it's the violent crimes that's occurring at parks. And we have a camera trailer behind us. I remember the first camera trailer being set up at Upper Pat Hurley, and then City Councilor Ken Sanchez working by us as the Southwest Area Command, the first mobile camera to be issued to an area command so that we could use. So shots fired has impacted the Southwest, whether it's coming from the Mesa and the complaints of citizens who are hearing these shots at night and worried for their safety, all the way through the violent crime occurring at our parks. And what this new process is going to do is we identify the areas of town with the most shots being fired, and then we actively go into those neighborhoods and start working with the community and identifying where these shots may be coming from, finding who the principal players are, starting to intervene with these individuals and hold these individuals accountable. But one of the things we've learned over the years is deterrence is a big part of some of these operations. Years ago when we started the bait car program, Deputy Chief Vega and myself, we created signs that said bait car in area, and it helped to deter people from committing crime. The same concept has been now applied a decade later, where we have gunshots, hear them, see them, report them, help APD cut down on gun crime. And we talked about the first area that we piloted and the decrease that we saw in shots being fired and some of the impact that it had on the community. And we're hoping that we could model this throughout the city and continue to grow this program. It goes hand in hand with our value of community-based policing, working with the community to help fix some of their concerns, working together to find solutions to the problems. And at the same time, we're a stronger voice with the citizens of a neighborhood who people who are committing crime know are keeping an eye out and reporting this and working with law enforcement. So for me, this hits at a lot of different levels success and why it should be successful and why it's important that we do this, whether it's reducing violent crime, ensuring that the neighborhood knows that their concerns are being heard, and making sure that we're working with them to help fix some of the problems that are occurring within the community. So I want to say thank you to everybody who have worked on this. We have approximately 350 signs printed as a start. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Councilor Pena, who was also my councilor at one point in time, or the mayor.
Yeah, no, I'll just give her a proper introduction because there is no doubt in this community and in our whole city that Councilor Pena has been absolutely critical in highlighting issues in her district, especially some of the challenges around public safety and the unfortunate loss of life, even back here right at this park. And so she also was absolutely critical in helping us get the funding to get gunshot detection off the ground, in addition to all sorts of funding. And so we're grateful for her leadership, Councilor Carissa Pena.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Welcome. Thanks for being here in District 3. As you all know, ShotSpotter is an important piece of technology that we added just a few years back. And, you know, as the mayor said, you know, I just advocated kind of separately from the mayor's office to try to get it implemented here. And the reason being is that some of the constituents, I mean, we have lots of shots throughout the city. As a counselor, I hear them I hear them myself where I live. And then, of course, lots of calls from the various constituents in the community. And, you know, people, now that we started to put in the ShotSpotters within the district and throughout the city, people will call and say, well, I called the police didn't come out. But the thing that's most important about ShotSpotter is it's kind of like a fingerprint. It's a fingerprint that gets left behind when somebody comes and does this kind of act. You know, I've called in from the house, and then you call the police officers, and then all of a sudden, a couple hours later, you'll see some officers out there picking up some of the shell casings, which is an important tool as part of the big picture. And then that helps us create the data that shows exactly what the chief was saying and the mayor was saying about the data about where there's concentration of the shots being fired at. That way we can kind of narrow it down. As you know, data has turned out to be such an important tool, and having ShotSpotter helps us to get there. And as they said, you know, solving cases related to it, being able to detect where the gunshots came from. I mean, it's just really a really critical tool. And I'm excited that the Southwest Mesa, although, you know, I'm always saying that we can use more, but I think we're pretty heavily concentrated. Although we're still hearing the gunshots, we're hoping that this will deter it, and it seems like the data is showing that it will. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Counselor. And we do want to hear from a couple of folks involved a little bit more directly in both the area command and this program. So let's start with Lieutenant Andrew Harmian.
Hello, everyone. Just to give you a little bit of background of how this program started, we were at the crime lab. We had been assigned a pretty awesome detective, Detective Lukanoff, who we were kind of brainstorming on how to reduce some of the gun crimes that we've been having in our city. We're actually going to a lot of these gun meetings that we implemented with APD that have been very successful. And through these meetings, there was a lot of data brought up that showed that a gun crime was used from starting off from just shooting in the air all the way up to eventually used in a homicide. And how do we stop that gun from being used in a homicide in the future? So working with Lukanoff and coming up with different, brainstorming ideas, we started utilizing the ShotSpotter data and the program to see, like, hey, we can narrow down where the biggest areas of concern are for the ShotSpotter issues that we're having, and use that data to eventually, come up with the program to implement on making that change in those neighborhoods. So with working with her, we came up with a program that actually has shown some results, like the Chief and Mayor have mentioned, where we actually will start off with sending out a letter. That letter informs the community what's going on, lets you know that we're actually, doing something about it, because we're working very hard to ensure that you feel safe in your community. So we're going to send out that letter to let you know what we're doing. The second thing that we will do is go out in the actual communities, put out the signs, and start talking to people that we interact with in the actual community. We had several success in the Southeast, talking to neighbors, explaining their concerns, pointing us in the right direction, just helping us, come up with that team, working together to actually solve some of these issues. The next step is coming up with the actual attack plan in that area. With all the data that we receive from not only the community, but also from the ShotSpotter technology, we will then come up with a attack plan specific for that area, working with the community members. For example, we actually met with one of the neighborhood meetings in the Southeast Area Command, and through that meeting, we come to find out that there was other ways that we could be doing better things with this program, like translating our letters to Spanish. There were several individuals in this neighborhood that might not have understood our letters when they were receiving them, and so that was a cue that we took on to say, hey, like, we can get better at this program through your help. And through that interaction, we were able to add to our program. Same thing in the Northeast Area Command, where we've met with several neighbors and come up with different attack plans for that neighborhood that addresses the issues that they're facing. But ultimately, the program, we want to make sure to show that we work together with the community to find out how to solve the problem together. Ultimately, also, one of the things that we were discussing, me and Detective Lukanoff, is how many calls for service this generates, and how many, if we were to make an impact and lower the number of ShotSpotters, it would be that much less calls that officers have to go out and actually take reports on or collect evidence for. So in return, they'll be out there solving the crimes that are happening around the neighborhood that we support. So this program, it's fresh, it's new, and it's going to continue to grow. And we just hope that the community helps us out and interacts with us regarding this program. So thank you, guys.
Thanks so much, Lieutenant. And just want to emphasize what he articulated is that this idea came from, the department on up. And I think that's what we always try and reflect, is that we need to listen to our victims and also listen to our neighbors and listen to our officers about what they think might help. And this is a great example of just that. So with a little bit more on this in the Southwest, the Area Commander, Renee Barraza.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, thank you very much. My name is Renee Barraza. I'm the Area Commander for the Southwest Area Command. As you see to your right and my left, this park has been impacted by violent crime, shootings, homicides from looking at the memorial. But with the ShotSpotter detection device that we have, gunshot, we've been able to make a huge impact on that by collecting evidence, as you heard Mayor and Chief and Councilor Pena talk about it. We continue to improve our processes. In this great process of SHOT program, we're seeing those positive results of lowering gun violence in other area commands, and I'm really excited to see this part of the program come to the Southwest Area Command, because not only with camera trailers, surveillance cameras, having the gun detection device lead us to an area where the gun was fired 40 to 80 feet around there. Putting those things in place only gets us closer to solving crimes and reducing the violence in our communities, which is ultimately the biggest goal. So I'm excited for this program to move to the Southwest. We continue to hit all our areas and our hotspot areas with extra patrols. We use the data from ShotSpotter activations to better allocate our officer hours. When we look at that data, it tells us more likely when shots are being fired through the Southwest. I then delegate that to my lieutenants, my sergeants, to be able to allocate officers in those hours where we think, or the data leads us to believe, where the ShotSpotter activations. But with this program, now we're reaching out to the community members when we see those repeat offend locations, to let them know that we are looking and we're going to do something about it. Although we do have all these things in place, one message I'd like to send to the community is, when you hear gunshots, still continue calling 242 cops or 911 if necessary, because although we do rely heavily on this great program that's been supported by the mayor, by our chief police, and our stakeholders like our city councilors, we still need the community's involvement to make an impact on our gun violence. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Commander. Okay, I think actually now, Francesca, Rebecca, we'll do Q&A if you want, and then I know we also, if folks want to go inside the mobile crime unit, we can do that.
Yeah, if you guys want B-roll of the crime van, we will open it up. It'll take a few minutes, but we'll turn it over to Q&A if you can announce who you are and what station you're with. Anybody? No questions? One? All right.
Griffin with GOV. So you guys talked a lot about data and ShotSpotter data. Are there any plans to more readily provide some of that data out to the public in general, instead of just targeting the properties where you're finding it, as in just telling us where you're seeing a lot of the gunshots?
There is different websites where we release information. I'll take that back to the the Deputy Chief of the Field Services Bureau, Cecily Barker and JJ, and I'll see where they could release, because I do think it's important we release key information. We don't want to release every single bit of information, especially if we're actively conducting investigations in those areas. But I'll take it back to them, and I think it's a great idea if it's not being readily released, that we release where some of the hot spots are, along with the fact that we're putting these signs out and that we're working with those communities.
And then I also wanted to ask, when it comes to the notices for property owners, so I think it sounds like it looks like a letter for the property owners. What might that letter,
Do we have a copy? Do you have a copy of the letter?
We can send it out digitally as well.
Rebecca has a copy of the letter, and she'll provide it for you afterwards.
Yeah, sorry, I can show you afterwards.
and then I guess my other last question when it comes to the notices, so is it just the one letter? Are there going to be repeat notices? How does that follow-up process?
They will continue to work with the area until they get the desired results. They will do in-person follow-ups to some of the locations where they feel that they need to have follow-up because they feel that those are the places where the shots may be coming from. And I think that's it. It's basic. George, you guys have anything else to add on?
Just for the first question too, it's not just the ShotSpotter areas that we're working. It's also when neighborhoods are calling in and you know, we have a really good data process to collecting a lot of different data, not just from ShotSpotter. So whenever we do have a hotspot in any neighborhoods, that's what we're using as well. So it's a multi data collection that we use, and then we actually go out and do it. But on the response, we will send out that first letter. But then we'll start working, for example, in some of the neighborhoods that we have done this in so far, some of the neighbors have pointed us to a direction where we think that the offenders are. And it's actually, helped us out a lot to narrow down and then go and make those contacts, knocking on the doors, and then coming up with packets like, there might be, that house also might have someone has a warrant in there, or there might be a traffic issue that's a lot of speeders are coming out of that house. We'll then, change the TAC plan to that area. So that's kind of what we'd be doing. So.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Shelby Wyatt, KRTV News 13. The 47% decrease stat that was given, do you have a time frame on what that was?
I believe it was 3 months.
Yeah, so that was from January when we started mid-January from when we started it to the end of February, and it should be on the sheets when you guys go.
Nick Lehman, ABQ Rod. Chief, is there a over these 4 years of how many per year ShotSpotter activations been released to the public, and how we can track as a public to see if it's going down, going up, or staying the same?
We've been really secretive over where our ShotSpotter locations are. That is with purpose. I know that nationally there's been a leak of where they're at, and there's people who could find it in different places. But we are transitioning out of that, and this program is one of those first ways that we've also found where we could transition and educate the community. So I foresee that in the future there will be more and more releasing. We brought it up. I think it's a great idea, and I think it's something we're going to take back from today and combine with some of the efforts they're doing and see how we could use this more as a public educational tool. So I agree that, today we all get ideas at times, and we're going to go forward with some of these ideas.
I'm curious, during that trial, the pilot program at Wisconsin, Chico, or wherever that was, did that warrant any arrests, or what was the final outcome when it comes to actually tracking down some of those?
Not in that particular area, but in other areas we have seen, like when we were working in our northwest area, or actually, I take it back, in the southeast area, we did have a house that was recognized as being a problem where there was gunshots coming from. That individual was actually arrested, and we did see down that same street, and it went from having multiple every day to 0. And I'm sure we'll be able to show you those stats. But also on the follow-up part, we do have our divert team, who is a civilian based team or professional staff team that goes out and does a lot of follow-up for us as well. So so that we're not having sworn officers doing all the work. We also have our professional staff that go out and do the majority of the work for us, and going out and getting the data and putting up the signs and talking to individuals and actually getting video for us. We're working in the Northeast right now. We've got several videos from a lot of the altercations that have happened in that area, and because of our divert team helping with those processes. So.
And then you got to remember, it all ties in. We find videos on an interior street. Sometimes we don't get license plates, but we at least have vehicle descriptions when they start hitting the roadways where we have license plate readers. So this is also another bigger piece to all the technology that we've brought to the city. And sometimes you could utilize a license plate reader, sometimes you can't. But I think one of the things I want to go back to is the fact that sometimes these don't result in an arrest. And this goes back to our bait car days. One of the things we really learned when we rolled out the bait car program, and we know how successful that's been over the years, is that the signage is a big part of it, and it's used as a deterrence. And sometimes when people know that you have an eye on them, or that they're no longer flying under the radar, they change behavior, and they kind of have that built-in deterrence that they're afraid the cops are looking, or that they're going to get caught. And this also has those same premises of notifying the neighborhood that we're aware of the problem, that we're looking at it, and a lot of times those individuals choose no longer to participate in that activity because there's that fear of getting apprehended.
Just a clarification, so the ShotSpotter company, you guys are still in partnership. This isn't like a new program.
No, we're still in partnership with the same company that's done ShotSpotter. This is just an additional way that the Albuquerque Police Department has found for us to utilize that technology to develop new programs that work within the community. And I think we've been very creative. I mean, we've been very creative on how we've found new ways to utilize this technology. And like I said from the very beginning, I was a deputy chief when this program came in, and the first idea was we were just going to respond to gunshots. And we've then incorporated it into investigations. We've helped use it to figure out sequence of shots being fired, to figure out a lot of other information, which at times just gives our detectives the ability to ask questions during an interview for them to get clarification. And now we're using it to pinpoint hotspots on how we could get resources out there to work with these communities. So we'll continue to be innovative. We really believe in good information comes up from the top. That's why monthly there's a chief's breakfast where randomly chosen officers come to have breakfast with the chief and bring up these ideas. And quite frankly, some of the best ideas that we've had come up during the past 3.5 years as I've been chief have been from our ground level officers who work every day, us hearing their voice during a meeting saying, this is important, chief. And that's why I've never missed a chief's breakfast, because obviously it wouldn't make sense to be a chief's breakfast, but that's why I continue to have those. We've had them every month because our ground level officers know a lot of things that we should be listening to as leadership.
Any other questions? Is that it? One more. One more. Okay.
While you guys are here, I
Yep.
saw there was some money in capital outlay this year for ShotSpotter expansion. I'm curious, do you guys have any ideas where you guys might be looking to expand to?
One of my biggest priorities are some of our shopping districts. We know that we are not going to hide from the fact that during our biggest shopping day of the year, we had an incident at a mall that we needed to deal with. So shopping centers and schools are some of the biggest priorities that I have for ShotSpotter to be rolling out to.
All right, everybody. Thank you. If you guys want to stick around, they will be opening this up for B-roll. Thanks.